Okay. The 2000 season was the first one with Dave Wanstead as head coach after he had replaced Jimmy Johnson. It was the offseason where Dan Marino retired. They signed Jay Fiedler to be the starting quarterback. He won the start. No, they signed him to compete with Damon Heward, who had been the backup in 99 to compete for the starting job. They gave it to Jay Fiedler. Dolphins got off to a good start. They defeated the Seattle Seahawks in Dave Wanstead's first game, 23-0, behind a good rushing effort from Lamar Smith, who they picked up as a free agent running back, who wound up rushing for over 1,000 yards.
Thurman Thomas was on that team.
Yeah, he blew out his knee in October, I want to say, and he was like a kind of a third down back role, was mostly pass catching, and then blew out a knee October and November, and then that was it. Never played again in the NFL. The season was also famous for the Monday Night Miracle, which was a Monday night game against the Jets at not MetLife Stadium, well, and it was a Giant Stadium, where the Dolphins led 30-7 entering the fourth quarter and blew it. And they actually, this was a weird game too, because they actually wound up trailing 37-30, tied the game, got the ball first in overtime.
Oh, yeah.
Jay Fiedler gets intercepted, but it was Marcus Coleman, who's a DB, fumbles on the interception return. Dolphins recovered, and like 4 plays later, Jay Fiedler's intercepted again by Marcus Coleman. Jets go down, kick a field goal. So Dolphins lose that game, which was you want to talk about a collapse? That was a collapse. The Dolphins, though, rebounded, won the division title in a weird game at New England, last game of the season, where Linda Murray kicks a field goal. I think it was like 49 yards. Time's expired. The Dolphins won. Ooh, all of a sudden, the officials, half an hour after the fact, for some reason, decide, no, wait, there's time left on the clock. So they literally bring out players from the locker rooms for both teams. I'm not joking. You can look it up. For one last play from, I don't know, the Murray field goal was not on the last play of the game, but it was late. Then the game's over, but no, the game's not over. Both teams come back onto the field. Michael Bishop is then inserted a quarterback for the Patriots because Drew Bledsoe is showered and he's ready to go home. Throws one desperation heave. Incomplete. Dolphins win the division title, and they get to celebrate for a second time in a half-hour span. I'm not joking.
I was alive and paying attention to football back then. I have no idea that even happened. I think that was the year I graduated college, which was a complete blur to me.
Maybe.
It was a good year, though. It was a really good year. Okay. 2021. Let's move on to the 2021 season, which was another 11-5 record, which is one of the reasons why I think the Dolphin fans put too much disrespect on Dave Wanstead, who had back-to-back 11-5 seasons.
Okay, so that 2000 season ended the following week at Oakland. Dolphins had run Lamar Smith into the ground, rushed for over 200 yards against the Colts, but he had nothing left in the tank the following week. Lost 27-0 at Oakland. Ironically, the Dolphins had the ball first. They drove to like the Oakland 30-yard line or whatever. Jay Fiedler threw a pick six, I want to say it was. I know it was an interception. I think it was a pick six, and it was never a game. Anyway, that game did feature one of the most stupid catches you'll ever see. That Odell Beckham type of catch, one-handed, stretch all over the place.
By who? Rondé Gatson?
Rondé Gatson. Yeah. It came when the Dolphins were trailing 27-0 in the second half. But
that guy had hands like a catcher's mitt.
Seven
2001, yes.
Okay, so the Dolphins come back after making the playoffs. They made the playoffs again, and in 2001, what stands out immediately about that season, of course, was the games of week 2 or week 3. It was week 3. One of the early season games were canceled because of the events of 9/11.
Oh, okay.
It was week 2. And then the Dolphins came back. The first game after 9/11, they played the Oakland Raiders at Hard Rock Stadium, Joe Pro Player, whatever it was called back then. And they won a thrilling game. Last second touchdown run by Jay Fiedler on a scramble with time running out. And famous picture from Sports Illustrated of Fiedler on the ground in the end zone, like holding his right hand up in celebration. But that game, the atmosphere was completely electric. Dolphins wound up 11-5. They made the playoffs as a wild card. They had a chance to win the division, lost at New England late in the season. and the Patriots wound up winning their first Super Bowl with Brady. Dolphins faced the Baltimore Ravens in the wildcard playoffs at home, and they got out-physicaled, overpowered, outmatched, 20-3 final.
So it's been basically a decade. It's been 2 decades since the Baltimore Ravens have been out physicaling Miami. Oh, pretty much, yeah. And that was the Brian Billick Ravens, I believe.
What? No, they were the defending Super Bowl champions.
Dolphins
didn't match. What else stood out? And I guess we should mention that year was also, should be remembered, not fondly, for the draft, when the Dolphins had pick 26, I want to say. And
is that the cornerback? Yes,
they could have had Drew Brees, and there were some in the organizations who were pushing for the Dolphins to draft Drew Brees. They decided, nope. Instead, we'll go with a zone cornerback for our press defense, even though we have 2 great starters with Madison and Surtain, and drafted Jamar Fletcher. 2002, that was a promising season that went south. You want to talk about late season collapse? Holy moly. So this was a season where the Dolphins made the huge trade in the offseason, traded 2 first-round picks, one of which was a conditional one, along with a 4th-round pick, and they got like a 4th-round pick in return to the New Orleans Saints for Ricky Williams. And Ricky Williams was every bit as good as advertised that first season, where the Dolphins rushed for 1,853 yards.
Damn, how'd you remember that number? How many touchdowns? Let's check.
I want to say 18, 16, I think, his first year, or 16 or 18.
It was 16. It was 16.
Okay.
17 all total.
There you go. And I remember that number because it's a franchise record. It shattered the team record, which at the time was 12 something. And the one that's come closest since then was Ricky Williams the following year. I mean, absolutely brilliant. The Dolphins were rolling. They were 5-1. Sunday night win at Denver. First game in NFL history, I think it might still be, where each team kicked a 50-yard field goal in the final minute. Dolphins got the last one, 24-22. Unfortunately, Jay Fiedler broke a thumb during that game. Dolphins had to go to backup Ray Lucas. Didn't work out well. They went 5-4. Then they came down the stretch, needing a win in one of their final 2 games. Lost at Minnesota in a Saturday game, 13-7, I want to say it was, where Minnesota felt like had the ball the entire game. And then came that nasty collapse in the finale against the Patriots when they were up 24-13 with 5 minutes left. And basically, you want to talk about Murphy's Law from that point on. It was Murphy's Law, including a kickoff out of bounds. Patriots got the ball first in overtime, marched for field goal, ball game, end of season.
You know, it's funny. I started looking at rushing totals because I'm trying to figure out if that 2,502 yards was like the best in franchise history. And no, in 1972, they ran for 2,960 yards, which is
in 14 games.
Unreal.
In 14 games, do the math. It's more than 200 yards a game.
Wow, that's impressive. Mercury Morris and Zonka were 1,000-yard backs.
Mm-hmm. And Jim Kick had like 600 yards or something.
521. But yeah, that's quite impressive. And there I was about to crown this Dolphins team to be the best since 2002. But truthfully speaking, there's some Mercury Morris and Larry Zonka and Jim Kick years where they ran for way more than 2,500 yards.
And different era, obviously, and then they combine that running game with a very, very good bend but don't break defense. Very sound. There also very few penalties, and that led them to their record. So that was 2002. 2003 season. This was after the Dolphins had failed to make the playoffs in 2002 at 9-7. In 2003, they improved their record. They were 10-6. Ricky Williams had another really good year with 1,300 and something yards rushing, but he was overused. And the Dolphins wound up 10-6, and they were one of those unfortunate teams to not make the playoffs despite a 10-6 record. It also happened in 2020, if you recall. Brian Flores' second year, the Dolphins finished 10-6, didn't make the playoffs. And if you think that sucks, there also have been, I believe it's 2 instances in the NFL where a team finished 11-5 and didn't make the playoffs, including
What teams?
Yes, so including the 2008 New England Patriots, who lost to the Dolphins for the AFC's title in a tiebreaker. Patriots, if you forgot that, Patriots still wound up going 11-5 with Matt Castle at quarterback because Brady blew out an ACL in the opener, except the Dolphins won. I don't recall if it was division record or conference record, but Dolphins had the tiebreaker, and the Patriots lost out on the wild card tiebreaker and were left out. So it's happened in 2003. The Dolphins, who had a good year, the crushing loss was a Monday night loss against the Eagles that I believe knocked them out of the playoffs. And then they wound up 10-6. I can't think of anything else that really jumps out. I know Adewale Ogunleye had a really, really big year as a pass rusher opposite Jason Taylor. They had a great set of bookends. Ricky Williams was a star offensively, and again, it's tough to call it like a season of failure when you go 10-6, but they didn't make the playoffs. Man,
well, you know what stands out to me about that season, other than it was Ricky Williams last until he came back from his hot weed smoking hiatus. It's that Jay Fiedler had a 72.4 passer rating. In today's game of the NFL, a 72.4 passer rating is Josh Rosen caliber bad. And that was a winning quarterback.
Yes. Why? Interesting. You should say that. Are you perhaps referring to the analysis piece I wrote for AllDolphins.com on Thursday, where I point out that Jay Fiedler had a brilliant winning percentage as a starting quarterback in his first 4 seasons with the Dolphins, who still felt the need to upgrade at the position because he wasn't quite good enough. Now in 2004, which is before Bill Parcells, which is before Nick Saban, this was
Dave's last year, right?
It was Dave's last year, and it got off to all kinds of bad start, even before the whole Ricky Williams incident, when they named Joel Collier as the new offensive coordinator, and a month afterward, he was no longer the offensive coordinator. And they named as offensive coordinator, despite having on staff several very qualified candidates, including Mark Trestman, they named Chris Furster as the offensive coordinator in 2004 for the Dolphins.
And that name should be very familiar with Dolphin fans.
Yeah, he kind of became very known to Dolphin fans some 13 years later. And then, of course, right before training camp, boom, headline, whoa, Ricky Williams quits the team on the eve of the start of training camp. Dolphins, in a panic move or not, trade a 3rd-round pick to the St. Louis Rams for Lamar Gordon, a running back from, I want to say, North Dakota State, who didn't really pan out. And then on top of that, I want to say that was the year they had a contract dispute with Adewale Ogunleye, who was a great defensive end pass rusher, wound up trading him to the Chicago.
Time out. Jason Taylor was a great defensive end pass rusher. Owale Ogunleye was a good defensive end pass rusher. Because if you're going to say that, if you're going to say Ogunleye was great, what was Jason Taylor then?
Hall of Famer. Okay, great might be okay. Since I rail against hyperbole, so I will check myself. Bad Allen. Okay, he was a very good pass rusher. Can we give him very good pass rusher?
Very good pass rusher. Very good businessman as well.
Yes,
but
he basically, they had a contract impasse, wound up trading him to the Bears for Marty Booker and a draft pick. Marty Booker, who was a solid wide receiver.
Pretty much a number.
Certainly not as impactful. Sorry?
Seemingly looking at the stats was a number 3. But
if you hold on, the problem is you can't get anything by that season because the passing game was highly dysfunctional. To make matters worse, second game of the season, I believe it was, or third game, they lose Larry Chester, who, as we discussed on an earlier podcast, was a stud as a run stuffer. And then because of that, and then because the offense was so dysfunctional, they opened it up to a quarterback competition, having traded a 2nd-round pick to the Eagles for A.J. Feely in the offseason, opened it up for training camp competition. Jay Fiedler won the job, but then they benched Jay Fiedler at halftime of the opener against the Tennessee Titans when they were down 7-0, I think it was. The offense was booty cheeks in the first half, but they were only down 7-0. make the switch anyway, wind up losing the game 17-7. AJ Feely starts the second game, I want to say, and then they go back to Feeler because AJ Feely couldn't hack it. Offense is a complete mess the entire season. And then because of that, what opposing offenses all do is basically the game plan was don't turn the ball over. That offense can't beat a good Division I team. So we'll run the ball the entire game, which is why the Dolphins wound up being 31st or 32nd run defense, because that's all opponents, because they suck so bad. Start off 0-6, got wound up to 1-8. Dave Wanstead fired. Jim Bates hired as interim head coach, does a pretty good job, gets them to 3-4 in the final 7 games, including what I would say is the biggest upset in Dolphin history, bigger than beating the Bears in 85, because the Dolphins were a very good team that year. They were 1-12. They beat a 12-1 or 2-11, beat a 12-1 New England team that had won the Super Bowl the year before, on their way to a second straight Super Bowl. Monday night game, wearing the orange jerseys. They won 29-28 on a 4th down touchdown pass from AJ Feely, because Feeler was hurt by then, to Darius Thompson. But the final result was 4-12. And
let me ask you a question. You don't blame any of the demise on that season on Ricky Williams just deciding he'd rather smoke weed than play football?
On him bailing, more so than that, yes, that more so bailing on the team on the eve of training camp, where he knew he was going to get suspended. I don't know what the original suspension was going to be, but him bailing on his team left him high and dry. But the mess with the OC to begin in the offseason, and the mess at quarterback. Remember, as we said in a previous episode, Jay Feeler's win-loss record in his first 4 seasons as Dolphin was outrageous.
Yeah.
2005, in honor of episode.
That was the first year of Nick Saban, right? That's Nicky's team.
You are correct, sir. And Nick Saban came in. Very obvious. The dude knows X's and O's. But if we talk about Brian Flores not necessarily being great with people, let's say that Nick Saban probably belongs in that category as well.
And who's Nick Saban on? Whose coaching tree is Nick Saban on? Bill Parcells.
Parcells, yeah.
No, I'm sorry. No, he's not. He's on Bill Belichick's. He actually did not coach
which is on the Bill Parcells coaching tree. It's
yes, but he's not on Bill Parcells' coaching tree. He's on the Bill Belichick coaching tree because his first NFL job was with Bill Belichick in Cleveland.
I understand that, but Belichick coach with Parcells, so it's Parcells.
Yeah.
Another branch. Okay. Anyway, we digress.
But I don't think I don't think it's fair to say that Parcells' proteges are poor when it comes to people treatment. Because look at Todd Bowles, look at Dan Campbell. They're still on the tree.
Good point. Not all of them, but there are some who are.
Yes, but all of Belichick's fruit.
Well, that is true.
I have horrible people skills. Look, see how I did that?
No.
See how I did it? You like how I connected those dots?
Yes, you did. Horrible people skills. Let's say not great. I'm going to be
mediocre, lackluster,
very mediocre,
disappointing.
Troublesome
people skills.
Yes.
And Nick was abusive too. Remember when he made that defensive lineman cry?
Manuel Wright, supplemental draft pick. Yes, he did.
Big tough football player cry. God.
Well, I don't know if he was emotionally tough. No offense, but
yeah.
Okay. Anyway, we digress. And actually, I think that was a second year because Manuel Wright, I believe, was drafted in 2006. Anyway, in 2005, the Dolphins were coming off a 4-12 season with Nick Saban. Oh, the big story in that year, probably other than Nick Saban becoming the head coach, is the Dolphins had the 2nd overall pick as a result of their 4-12 season. And they went the veteran route at quarterback with Gus Frerotte, who was a solid journeyman, when they could have had Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers wound up going 24 to Green Bay.
But in fairness, you do free agency before you do the draft. But yes, Aaron Rodgers should have been that selection at 2.
Yes. And that was the year the number 1 overall pick was Alex Smith, who went to the 49ers. And this was a year there were 3 running backs selected in the top 5. And the Dolphins took Ronnie Brown from Auburn, starting a pattern of Nick Saban loving his SEC dudes. And Ronnie Brown was a very good NFL player. Great guy, too, with all due respect, not 2nd overall pick. Good. if we're going to be
but
honest.
He might have had the best career of all those backs that were drafted in the first round.
You remember the other two?
Cadillac Williams and
University of Texas.
What I can't remember his name. What's his name?
Cedric Benson.
Cedric Benson. Yes.
Cedric Benson. So the Dolphins,
and I don't think they were the best back in that draft because I believe Shady McCoy was in that draft.
Don't remember. I'd have to look that up.
All right, don't worry about it.
Anyway, so the Dolphins under Nick Saban with Gus Frerotte at quarterback got off to a great start. They won their first game 34-10 against the Denver Broncos. In fact, that was Mike McDaniel's first game as an NFL personnel member. I don't even know what his role was back then. May have been a ball boy, if I remember.
I think he was on. I think he was on the. He was assistant. He was one of the assistants. Yeah,
that was actually his first game because I remember McDaniel always mentioning that game, and it's a game the Dolphins won 34-10. Mm-hmm. That ended with Jason Taylor with a long fumble return for a touchdown. Dolphins got off to a 3-7 start. Then all of a sudden it clicked. They won their last 6 games, finished 9-7, and this was the year also that Ricky Williams came back from his hiatus, was suspended for the first 4 games of the regular season, and then showed up.
Came back for the first time because I believe there was another hiatus afterwards.
Oh, correct. Yes, there was.
Yeah.
In fact, he spent the season in the CFL.
Yeah.
Anyway, Dolphins finished 9-7. Not exactly a great year. Best game of the season probably was against Buffalo late in the year. They were down 23-3 heading into the fourth quarter. Frerotte was out of the game after getting injured on a safety. Sage Rosenfels off the bench. 3 fourth quarter touchdown passes to Chris Chambers, who that day had 15 catches for 238 yards. And the Dolphins won 24-23. Today's episode 2006. The highlight was the big decision of the offseason. Do we sign Drew Brees as a free agent? Do we trade a second-round pick for Dante Culpepper? Dolphins made the wrong decision. Has then GM Randy Mueller explained, however, the team physician who red flagged Drew Brees' shoulder was affiliated in some way, shape, or form with owner Wayne Huizenga. And this is not me saying this.
I know you're going through history, but you're bringing up this old stuff that's just like a scab on this franchise's.
That's part of the history. What else? That's what matters.
We make bad decisions when it comes to quarterback time and time again.
Always. Anyway, so as I was saying before, I was so rudely interrupted. He was red flagged by a doctor, was affiliated with Wayne Huizenga. Therefore, the Dolphins decided they had no choice, but obviously to go with his recommendation.
Let's go get the bum leg Dante Culpepper. Yes.
Who lasted 4 games. Then I work 2007.
And in fairness, I supported the Culpepper decision, as in most of this fan base, who in hindsight, after Drew Brees turns into a Hall of Fame quarterback, said, God, we really screwed that up. But no, at that time, most of the fan base wanted Culpepper. Let's not have selective memory.
Who, mind you, was coming off a torn ACL.
With a bum knee.
Move on to 2007. That was your first year on the beat. 1-15.
You know what I remember about 2007?
Joey Porter undressing Cam Cameron on the team plane.
I thought it was a team meeting room.
Was it? There was another incident on a team plane, but I know there was a dressing down by Joey Porter.
Yeah. That was the year that I learned Cam Cameron might be the worst coach that I've ever covered in my life, but understand I've covered some legends as coaches. Which includes Larry Coker, and y'all gonna put some respect on his name, considering no University of Miami football coach will ever come close to his record. I said it, and I don't take it back. 60-15, they'll never touch it again. The Hurricanes cried about back-to-back Peach Bowls and ran them out of town for back-to-back Peach Bowls, and haven't touched it since in 20 years?
What was Jimmy Johnson's record?
Coker has the all-time University of Miami winning record.
Continue what you were saying. I'll go ahead and look.
Okay. Anyway, I never knew incompetence till I met Joe Philbin.
No,
and
Cam Cameron.
I'm sorry. Oh, oops, my bad. Floridian slip. Don't stop disappearing on me, Poupart.
You say Floridian slip. It was Cam Cameron in 2007.
Yeah, Cam Cameron.
Again, because the Dolphins didn't want to hire Mike Tomlin, who was one of
Oh, really? Boy, you're just bringing up all kinds of scabs on this franchise's history, huh? You're just picking at every single scab.
What do you want, a rose-colored? You want a rose-colored history lesson, or are we being real?
Yes, they didn't want to go at Mike Tomlin. Cam Cameron did a poor interview the first time, and they said because they wanted to put a circle into a square peg, they said, you know what? Let's meet with him a second time because he's this guru offensive coordinator who's got former head coaching experience, even though he sucked at Indiana. And you know what? We'd rather do that than do the African-American hip-hop coach that really impressed us.
Too hip-hop was
It was too hip-hop. That really impressed us. That coach turned out to be Mike Tomlin. And he turned out to be a legendary Hall of Fame coach who's still with the Pittsburgh Steelers, has won a championship. Yeah, this franchise just makes bad decision after bad decision. I've been here for most of them.
2008 season when the Dolphins hired Bill Parcells to oversee the operation, brought in Tony Sperano, who was an offensive line coach from the Dallas Cowboys, to serve as head coach. And the Dolphins got themselves some good, solid veterans all over the place.
Hey. Don't disrespect Jeff Ireland. When Bill Parcells came in, it was the trifecta. You don't mention Bill Parcells and Tony Sperano without mentioning Jeff Ireland too. Okay? Don't be disrespectful.
Who was most responsible for the player acquisition?
Who had a greater influence on the franchise during that run?
Bill Parcells.
All three.
Bill Parcells.
Ireland lasted longer.
And that's not what you asked. You asked who had the biggest influence.
Okay.
Not even close. And in fact, I would say that if it wasn't for Bill Parcells, Tony Sperano might have won Coach of the Year in 2008. But there was this perception that Bill Parcells was pulling the strings, so that took some of the luster away from Sperano. Anyway, Dolphins wound up a lot of good, solid veterans throughout the offseason. Quarterback was meh, and then the Jets acquired Brett Favre, released Chad Pennington. Dolphins pick up Chad Pennington. They unveiled a wild card, go 11-5, win the
Wildcat, not wild card.
Freud and slip, because that's what I'm used to the Dolphins getting when they make the playoffs. Sorry. Did I say that out loud? Sorry. Dolphins make the playoffs, go 11-5. Unfortunately, they lost in the playoffs, and that's the last time they won the division title. And it's also when the Patriots missed the playoffs despite going 11-5.
It feels like as you're giving this history lesson, you're just rubbing every the salt in the wound. You're just rubbing it. Every bad decision that you've made. Yes, I know I lived through all of them. I don't believe you rubbing in the 2004 bad decision or 2003 bad decisions in Miami's face. You just.
Dude, when I do the history lesson, I mentioned the highlights, and what I said that was wrong about 2008, that was even negative. Go ahead.
Okay. All right.
In 2007, they were 1-15. I'm sorry, I should have highlighted the overtime win against Baltimore.
Yeah, man, that was an impressive game by Greg Camarillo.
Yeah, except and to me, maybe I'm weird, but I saw the reaction to that win in overtime was like crazy, like they'd won a playoff game or something.
I cried. I shed a tear.
For me, I was like, so you're not going to go, you're not going 0-16. What's a big whoop? You're going to be 1-15. I mean,
1-15, but you're not the worst in NFL history. The Detroit Lions are.
Correct, which they did the following year in 2008.
Yes.
So, anyway, but 2008 was a very, very good season for the Dolphins. Chad Pennington had a great year at quarterback. The Wildcat was unveiled. That game against the Patriots at Gillette Stadium in week 3, or no, it was week 4 after the bye, was nothing short of brilliant when they unveiled the Wildcat, and the Patriots had.
Hey, you didn't talk about the birth of the Wildcat, which was
on the plane with David Lee,
coming off a
Lost to the Arizona Cardinals, which I believe was 31-10.
Let me check my facts here.
Started off 0-2.
You got that. God damn, you got the score right. God damn you. I was just testing you and I failed. It's like I play Stump Poupart and he hits the score. How do you remember a game from a score in 2008, without looking it up?
I told you that's one gift I have is good memory with numbers and names. And they lost the opener against the Jets 20-14 when they were down to try to pull out a late victory, and Chad Pennington was picked off in the end zone. I believe it might have been by Reva Silo.
And what was the score of the final game against the Jets that sealed the AFC East victory?
24-17. That's easy. Come on.
I wouldn't remember any of these, and I covered them.
Yeah, and I'll give you another one. And then even more impressive, the game after they beat the Patriots 38-13, they played the Chargers at home at a time when the Chargers were very good, and they won 17-10. They basically ate the final 5.5 minutes. This is a game you would have loved, or you did love, because it was done on the ground at the end of the game, protecting a seven-point lead. This was the season after the Dolphins surprised the entire NFL by going from 1-15 to 11-5 to win the AFC's title, and they were saddled. You want to talk about tough schedules? They opened that season with 3 consecutive games against playoff teams from the previous years, including at Atlanta to start off with. They were against Indianapolis at home, and then they were at the Chargers. All the 3 of those teams had made the playoffs the year before. Didn't start off well. The Dolphins started off 0-3. Worse, Chad Pennington went down with the first of a couple of injuries that ultimately would end his career. Chad Henne had to come in as his replacement. Dolphins wound up going 7-9, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
Not a hell of a lot stood out from that game, from that season, except I want to say that was the year, and Omar, you got the media guide.
Yes.
Where they beat the Jets 30-25 in a November game with Ted Ginn scoring not once but twice on a kickoff return of 100 yards.
Yes, that was November the 1st. I think what stood out to me about that season, Ricky Williams was back from one of his many suspensions. They were still executing the Wildcat, and I believe Ronnie Brown went down with a Liz Frank injury against Carolina. Look at me, I'm showing off now.
Whoa, look at you.
And Ricky Williams finished that season rushing for 1,100 yards and scored 11 touchdowns. And I remember at the end of the season, when he was basically on fumes, Bill Parcells gave him an empty gas can.
He did. Yes.
Yes. Basically, how much do you have left in the tank, old man? Which is what Parcells said to him. Parcells would do all kinds of things like that to needle you. He'd do that to the media as well. He'd tell me he wrapped fish with one of my columns the other day. He would walk by and he'd just say something that stab you right in the ribs. It was like a jail shank, and it was always a humbling statement.
We want to talk about guys who necessarily wouldn't score very high grades in terms of interpersonal relationships, and he might be one.
Oh, no. I disagree with you. There. While he was abrasive,
no,
all the players loved him, and you won't find many players that did not like him, publicly or privately. And he was about as sandpaper as it comes. But I think he is this, but he cared, which is. But
I also think that it was more about respect than it was about affection, if we're going to be honest about it. Since we don't want to spend too much time on the history lesson, because some of you folks out there don't care for those, I do remember a Thursday night game against Carolina. They won 24-17, and Ricky had maybe 3 touchdowns and really stole the show. First round pick that year was Vontae Davis. Second round pick was the Dolphins doubling up on cornerbacks with Sean Smith.
Great strategy.
Which looked for a while like a really, really good starting tandem until kind of went by the wayside. Sean Smith left as a free agent, and Vontae Davis, as we all know, was traded to the Colts.
And I support both moves, but yeah, and Miami went through a little bit of a nightmarish period at cornerback for a little while, and eventually found their way. But yes, that was
you can say it. You can say it until they got Brent Grimes. I'll say it for you. I'll save you the trouble. I'll say it for you. Yeah, it was kind of a lull a little bit at cornerback until Brent Grimes came on the scene in 2013.
Mm-hmm. I got to remember if Jason Taylor was on that team or off that team, because you know that during that. Now Jason Taylor would tell you he's not like Parcells.
Correct. In 09 he was back.
Yes, 09 he was back. Started 15 games. Pretty much replaced Philip Merlin. You are right.
10 he was gone. 11 he was back.
Yeah, and really Parcells. It was him in a personal beef with Parcells, but Tony Sperano loved him and kept wanting to bring him back. And him and Parcells,
Dancing with the Stars was the beef. That Jason Taylor wanted to do that in the offseason, and Bill Parcells had a bug up his.
I agree with you. Yeah, but Jason also wanted out, and Jason wanted out at that point, and Parcells was banishing all veterans. I mean, the first order of business was to cut Zach Thomas. Come on, like that was a real harsh reality. Remember when they cut all the veterans?
No, that was before Zach was gone. Was gone after 20.
Yeah, but Parcells was banishing and challenging everybody who was pushing his authority, everybody who could push back.
Correct. Anyway, let's bring it back.
Push back.